It was a crisp Monday morning in downtown Chicago. The sun was still rising, casting long shadows over the glass facade of St. Catherine's General Hospital, one of the city's most prestigious and fast-paced medical centers. Inside, the sterile white floors gleamed under the fluorescent lights, and the air smelled of antiseptic, fresh coffee, and urgency. At exactly 7:15 a.m., the revolving door at the hospital's front entrance spun open. A young black woman in light blue surgical scrubs stepped inside, holding a manila folder in one hand and a large tote bag over her shoulder. Her sneakers squeaked slightly against the polished floor. Her hair was neatly pulled back in a low bun, and a long navy blue scarf wrapped around her neck partly covered the ID badge clipped to her top. Her name was Dr. Amanda Williams, though no one here knew that yet. She paused for a moment in the lobby, scanning her surroundings. Behind her, patients shuffled in through the front entrance, some in wheelchairs, others escorted by worried family members. To her left, a television played a muted news broadcast, and directly ahead was the reception desk, a large semicircular counter made of beige plastic laminate, cluttered with clipboards, hand sanitizer bottles, and a box of pens on a chain. Behind the desk stood a woman in her late 50s, white with tightly permed hair and a stern look etched permanently into her face. Her name tag read, Karen M., Reception Supervisor. She was typing something furiously on her desktop computer, her reading glasses perched low on her nose. Amanda approached the desk, her steps calm and confident, but polite. "Good morning," she said with a warm smile, her voice low and steady. "I'm here for the surgical department." Without looking up, Karen muttered, "Deliveries are at the back entrance, sweetheart." Amanda blinked. "Excuse me?" Karen sighed and finally looked up. Her eyes quickly scanned Amanda, from her black skin to her scrubs, her scarf, and her sneakers. She didn't see a doctor. She saw what she expected to see. "You must be new," Karen said with a clipped tone. "Medical assistants and transport staff check in at the employee entrance around the side. This front desk is for visitors and doctors only." Amanda tilted her head slightly, still maintaining her composure. "I understand, but I'm here for my first day. With the surgical team." Karen let out a soft laugh, the kind that wasn't friendly at all. "Oh, honey, that's not how it works here. You don't just walk in off the street saying you're with surgery. Go around back and have someone buzz you in." A few patients in the waiting area looked up, sensing tension. One nurse pushing a cart paused, glanced at the scene, then quickly turned the corner. Amanda stood silently for a moment. Her smile faded. She could have argued, she could have insisted, but she didn't. Instead, she simply nodded. "All right," she said quietly. "I'll use the employee entrance." As Amanda turned and walked away, Karen muttered under her breath, shaking her head. The nerve. Little did she know that the woman she had just dismissed, the one she assumed was an orderly or a nurse at best, was actually the new chief of surgery, and by the end of the day, the entire hospital would know her name. The morning rush at St. Catherine's was in full swing. Nurses wheeled carts down hallways, monitors beeped steadily in triage rooms, and residents huddled around charts and coffee cups, whispering about overnight cases. In the background, the hospital's intercom droned out updates. Dr. Patterson to radiology, code blue in ICU, paging Dr. Miller. Meanwhile, Karen, still seated behind the front desk, was recounting her earlier interaction with pride to two other receptionists and a junior administrative assistant who had just come on shift. "You should have seen her," Karen said, her voice low but animated. "Just waltzed in here like she owned the place. Scrubs, no coat, no ID showing. Told me she was with surgery. I mean, please." She shook her head and chuckled. She probably just finished training as a nurse's aide and thought that meant she could take the front door. The others snickered. "I swear, they all think they can skip the line now," one of them whispered. Karen leaned back smugly. "I sent her right back where she came from. Rules are rules." At that exact moment, the hospital director, Dr. Robert Miller, entered through the front doors. Tall, balding, and always in a rush. Beside him walked none other than the same black woman Karen had turned away just an hour earlier. Her scarf was now removed, and her ID badge clearly displayed her full name and title, Dr. Amanda Williams, Chief of Surgery. Karen froze mid-sentence, her mouth hanging open slightly, Her fellow staff followed her gaze, their smiles vanishing one by one. Dr. Miller was speaking cheerfully to Amanda. And of course, we've been eagerly waiting for your arrival, Dr. Williams. Your resume is beyond impressive. Stanford Med, Trauma Fellowship at Johns Hopkins, leadership roles on the East Coast. This team is lucky to have you, Amanda replied with her usual quiet confidence. Thank you. I'm excited to get started. I've heard this hospital has potential, and I plan to unlock it. As they reached the front desk, Dr. Miller addressed the staff. Everyone, I'd like to introduce our new Chief of Surgery. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Amanda Williams. Karen blinked. Wait, Chief of Surgery? Amanda turned her gaze directly to Karen. Her expression was calm, collected, but her eyes held a message. She didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She just stood there in total silence, letting the moment speak for itself. Karen stammered, I didn't realize, you didn't say, Amanda answered in a level voice. I did say I was here for the surgical department. Pause. You just didn't believe me. The silence that followed was deafening. Dr. Miller looked from Amanda to Karen, then chose to say nothing. The awkwardness spoke volumes. Karen, visibly shaken, sat back down without another word. Amanda nodded politely and continued walking toward the elevator with Dr. Miller. As they disappeared around the corner, whispers erupted like a wave across the lobby. The woman Karen had dismissed as someone probably in training had just become her superior. The news about the new chief of surgery spread through St. Catherine's General Hospital like wildfire. By mid-morning, it seemed like every hallway, break room, and nurse's station was buzzing with the same shocked whisper. The new boss is a young black woman. The staff didn't know what to do with that information. Some were curious, others skeptical, and a few quietly resentful. In the nurses' lounge, a group huddled over their coffee, whispering behind their hands. She looks so young, one of them said. Barely 30, if that. Another shook her head. You didn't expect someone like her, she muttered, and the room fell awkwardly quiet. Upstairs, in the residence wing, a few young doctors in training stood in front of the announcement board where Amanda's official staff photo and biography had been pinned. Her credentials were impressive. Stanford Medical School, Johns Hopkins Trauma Fellowship, a leadership role in Boston. One resident read the list aloud, eyebrows raised. So she's got more experience than anyone here. Another muttered, Still, you think she's gonna last? This place eats people alive. A third shrugged. I don't care what she looks like. If she can keep a patient breathing on the table, she's got my respect. Downstairs at the reception desk, Karen sat stiffly at her computer, barely typing, her face blank, but her mind spinning. She replayed her earlier exchange over and over. The woman in scrubs, the calm voice, the ID she hadn't looked at. She had made assumptions. She had spoken down to a doctor. Worse, she had spoken down to the new chief of surgery. The shame was heavy, but so was the stubbornness. She kept telling herself, she didn't say who she was. She didn't correct me. But deep down, Karen knew. She hadn't seen a professional. She had seen a stereotype. In radiology, Dr. Huxley leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, talking low to another senior physician. It's a diversity hire, he said flatly. Nothing against her personally, but we all know how this goes. His colleague didn't respond, just walked away silently. Back upstairs, Amanda sat behind her new desk in a quiet office with a view of the city skyline. She had taken off her scarf and coat, and her ID badge now clearly hung from her collar. She calmly read patient files and surgical reports, highlighting pages, making quiet notes. She was aware of the energy around her, the conversations being had behind closed doors and whispered in corners. But none of it was new. She had seen it all before. She had learned to let them talk. What mattered wasn't their approval. What mattered were the patients, the surgeries, the leadership she came here to provide. And eventually, whether they liked it or not, they would see who she really was. In the hallway outside her office, two nurses passed by. Did you see how she handled Karen this morning? One whispered. Didn't raise her voice. Didn't make a scene. The other nurse nodded. That's real power, she said. She didn't have to prove anything. In the elevator, Amanda caught a glimpse of her reflection. She adjusted her badge, smoothed her top, and took a breath. This wasn't the first time she had walked into a place where no one expected her to belong. But by the time she was done, they'd all remember her name. The staff meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. sharp in Conference Room B. Every department head, senior physician, and surgical team lead was expected to attend. The room buzzed with low conversations, clinking coffee cups, and the shuffling of papers. Doctors leaned against walls, nurses sat cross-legged in chairs, and a few administrative staff lingered near the back. People talked in clusters, but nearly every conversation circled back to the same subject: the new chief of surgery. Most had only heard bits and pieces. A few had seen her walking with Dr. Miller earlier that morning. One or two still didn't believe it. Some assumed it had to be a mistake. At exactly 10:01, the double doors opened and Dr. Robert Miller stepped in, followed by Amanda. She walked with quiet confidence, her posture tall, shoulders back, eyes calm. Her ID badge gleamed on her chest. Dr. Amanda Williams. A silence rippled through the room as heads turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. Every eye was on her. Dr. Miller smiled, oblivious to the tension. "Good morning, everyone. Thank you for making time today. Before we get into quarterly metrics, I want to introduce someone important." He turned to Amanda. "This is Dr. Amanda Williams, our new chief of surgery. She comes to us with extensive trauma and leadership experience, and I expect her to make a significant impact on both patient outcomes and our surgical training programs." He stepped aside. Amanda stood at the front of the room now, in full view. A pause. Then she spoke. "Good morning," she said simply. Her voice was calm, clear, and controlled. "I know I may not be what some of you expected, but I assure you, I'm here to work with you, not above you. I don't care about titles. I care about results, about patients, about integrity in the OR." She scanned the room. Some faces looked surprised, some looked skeptical. A few looked uncomfortable. She went on. "I didn't come here to play politics or climb ladders. I came here because this hospital has talent. It has heart. But it also has blind spots. I've seen them. I've heard them already. I don't expect instant trust. I expect to earn it." Silence. Then, a single nod from one of the trauma nurses in the back. A quiet murmur of agreement. Someone shifted forward in their seat. Amanda nodded once, then stepped back. "Let's get to work." Dr. Miller smiled again, slightly flustered. "Well said. All right, on to business." As the meeting resumed, Amanda found an empty seat. A few eyes still lingered on her, some with curiosity, some with suspicion, but also some with respect. And in the front row, Dr. Huxley leaned back in his chair, arms folded. He said nothing, but the crease in his brow showed he was already measuring her. Let him, Amanda thought. Let them all. She hadn't come to prove she deserved to be in the room. She'd come to run it. The emergency call came just after noon, a multi-vehicle accident on the I-94. Several injured, 2 in critical condition. The trauma bay lit up in an instant. Doctors snapped into motion, stretchers rolled in, monitors beeped, and voices barked orders over each other. Amanda was already changing into her surgical gown when the ER doors flew open and paramedics wheeled in, a man in his 40s, semi-conscious, with a deep abdominal wound and multiple fractures. His vitals were dropping fast. Blood soaked the gurney beneath him. Male, 45, no allergies. Blunt abdominal trauma, suspected internal bleeding. BP 80/40 and falling, the paramedic shouted. A few doctors hesitated. The senior trauma surgeon hadn't yet arrived. Nurses looked around for direction. Then someone called out uncertainly, "Where's Dr. Carter?" Before anyone could answer, Amanda stepped forward and snapped on her gloves. "Prep him for surgery. Page the OR. I'll lead." There was a moment of silence. Not because she lacked authority, but because this was the moment everyone had been waiting for. Would she falter? Would she freeze? But Amanda didn't flinch. "Get a type and cross. I want 2 units of O negative in transit. Get a fast scan now. Check for fluid in the abdomen." She moved quickly, her voice clear and commanding, her tone professional but firm. The team obeyed, their movements smoothing as her confidence took over the room. A nurse leaned in and whispered, "Dr. Williams, the OR isn't fully prepped." "Then we operate here if we have to," Amanda said. "If we wait, he dies." She turned to a young intern standing frozen at the foot of the bed. What's your name? D. Dr. Green. Doctor. Green, take over suction. You're with me now. 15 minutes later, they had him in the OR. Amanda led the procedure with precision, guiding the team like a seasoned conductor. At one point, there was a complication, unexpected bleeding near the spleen, and a junior surgeon panicked. Amanda calmly took over the clamp, stopped the bleeding, and continued without raising her voice. 3 hours later, the patient was stable, alive, and in recovery. Amanda scrubbed out, stripped off her gloves, and exhaled only once she was alone in the hallway. Outside the OR, staff were quietly buzzing. She was amazing, someone whispered. I've never seen anyone move that fast. She knew exactly what to do. Even the skeptical ones didn't have anything to say. Downstairs at the nurse's station, Sophie, the same ER nurse who had been watching since day one, leaned over to Karen. You should have seen her. She saved that man's life like she's done it 100 times. Karen didn't answer at first. Then, quietly, I believe you. In that moment, for the first time since Amanda walked into the building, the hospital started to shift, not just in how they saw her, but in how they saw what they had assumed. Not because she had demanded respect, but because she had earned it completely, without asking. The sun had started to set over the city by the time Amanda returned to the front lobby. The chaos of the emergency had passed. The halls were quieter now, filled with the soft hum of machines and the tired footsteps of staff heading into the evening shift. Amanda walked slowly, still in her scrubs, a little blood on her shoes, her face calm but worn from hours in surgery. As she approached the reception desk, Karen was there, alone this time, finishing a shift report, her eyes focused on the screen. She noticed Amanda in her peripheral vision. For a moment, she froze. Then she slowly turned, stood up, and faced her. There was no crowd this time, no witnesses, just the two of them, and silence. I owe you an apology, Karen said quietly, not looking away. This morning, I made assumptions. I judged you before I knew anything about you. And I was wrong. Amanda said nothing at first. She just studied the woman in front of her, the stiffness in her shoulders, the flush of guilt on her cheeks. It wasn't easy for someone like Karen to admit fault, but here she was. Karen's voice wavered. I've worked here for 22 years. I thought I'd seen everything. But I realize now that I still have things to learn about people, about myself. Amanda didn't raise her voice, didn't lecture. She simply nodded once. Growth starts with recognizing the problem. Karen nodded, eyes glassy. You didn't deserve the way I treated you. I'm sorry. Amanda's voice was calm but strong. You didn't see a doctor when you looked at me. You saw a stereotype. And you spoke to me like I didn't belong. That's not just about me. That's about how you treat anyone who doesn't fit your expectations. Karen swallowed hard. You're right. Amanda looked at her for a long moment, then softened. I accept your apology. I don't hold grudges. But I do remember how people show themselves. Every person who walks through those doors deserves to be treated with dignity, no matter how they look, what they wear, or where they're from. Karen nodded again, quiet. I'll do better. I hope so, Amanda said, because I plan to be here for a long time. They stood there a moment longer. Then Amanda turned and walked toward the elevators, her posture as straight as ever, her head held high. As she disappeared into the corridor, Karen sat back down slowly. But something had changed, not just in the hospital, but in her. From that day forward, whenever a new face walked in, black, brown, young, old, she made sure to ask the right questions, not to assume, not to judge, to listen first. Because she had learned in the most humbling way that greatness doesn't always look the way you expect. The next morning, the hospital stirred awake under a soft gray sky. Staff filed in through the entrances, sipping coffee, reviewing patient charts, preparing for another long, unpredictable day. But there was something different in the air. A quiet ripple of respect, subtle but unmistakable. Dr. Amanda Williams walked through the hospital doors, not as a stranger, not as someone to be doubted, but as someone whose name now carried weight. Her presence no longer sparked confused glances or whispered judgments. Instead, heads turned with quiet recognition. Some nodded. A few smiled. At the front desk, Karen stood up as Amanda passed. She straightened her blouse, her tone clear and warm. "Good morning, Dr. Williams." Amanda met her eyes, smiled gently, and nodded. "Good morning." It was a small exchange, simple, even ordinary, but it meant everything. It marked a shift not just in how Amanda was seen, but in how people at St. Catherine's were beginning to see each other. Later that day, Amanda stood at the back of the surgical floor, looking out over her team as they prepared for the day's procedures. Residents gathered around her, asking questions, seeking her input. Nurses checked supplies. Even the skeptical Dr. Huxley approached her to share a patient update. No sarcasm, no resistance, just quiet professionalism. Amanda answered him clearly, and when he turned to leave, he paused. "You handled that emergency yesterday better than I would have," he said. "You've earned your spot." Amanda didn't smile. She didn't need to. She simply said, "Thank you. I already knew I had." That evening, as Amanda exited the hospital, she passed a young black girl in oversized scrubs and a backpack, walking nervously toward the entrance for her first clinical shift. Amanda caught her eye and gave a small smile. "You'll do great," she said. The girl beamed. "Thanks, doctor." Amanda stepped into the cool evening air. The wind was sharp, but it carried something new with it, a sense of change. Not just because one black woman had proven herself, but because the hospital had been forced to confront its own quiet biases, its built-in assumptions, and its unspoken hierarchies. The journey hadn't been easy. It never was. But Amanda hadn't just walked into a building and claimed a title. She had walked into a system and changed it from the inside out. One patient, one surgery, one conversation at a time. And the story wasn't over, it was only just beginning.